All right, so this is Occult Satanic Story Hour. I'm just kidding. This is Clearing the Airwaves. I posted it Wednesday, February 4th, 2015. And it's funny how this, leads right up, or I've led right up to this, which I didn't even realize this was the next post, but it deals with the possible using Kabbalah or Gematria to break down potential or synthesize or extract or extrapolate, whatever you want to call it, a possible, or just the idea of using it to look at health, or, I don't know if necessarily to find a cure, because I don't think a single cure is what this whole thing comes down to is the fact that it's cycles and systems and development, what you eat over time, what your mind, what you think about, what you feed into, what you consume, basically. And death, I think, is inevitable anyway. So the whole idea of immortality in a physical sense has its obvious limitations, especially when you're in Earth, biological Earth form. All of what that entails. And it's just funny because in the last post, with that long span of time in between, it caused, I was already thinking of life and death and time, and eventually even the Formula 238, and then also 429, the cure and immortality, and just in the Ninth Arch, how much those concepts come up. Not so much the cure, but the codes and the secrets of what's contained in the Kabbalah, and in that book, and then Against the Light, it's all about cycles of time, and then also the sort of overlay or underlay, the blueprint in which things in different time spans, and then even systems, it seems like obviously they overlap, but the H.P. Lovecraft sort of thing, and Crowley, and then also Achad, and all this stuff seems to be leading to, or maybe not leading to, but showing an overlap with all of what is actually happening in the outer or the external world, with the development of external or mechanical systems, with the internet, transhuman sort of things, the global electricity grid, the smart grid, smart machines, all this stuff, and how those eventually will, again, also sort of, when you look at the eonic evolution of things, I don't know, you can just kind of see where it's all going. And the question of death, life and death, is integral, obviously, to all of this, philosophically, practically. So I'll just start reading it. And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him. And power was given unto them over the fourth part of the earth, to kill with sword, and with hunger, and with death, and with the beasts of the earth. Revelation chapter 6, verse 8. In my gathering of data during building my own Gematria database for my own personal perusal, I have come across many strands of seemingly unconnected information and subjects that can be seen to be related when looked at from a bird's eye view, or collective sort of view, which otherwise would seem unrelated. And that's another thing, is whenever I would put data in the database, it was kind of how I, in the order I got it. And then I slowly realized, I started putting things that were similar, and you could see like actually a gradual progression where it's like ancient ideas or basic fundamental concepts, and then like they slowly, like you can see the subjectification, and over time, like it's almost like you could see the gradual development of time itself in each cell or number, but you have to like organize them in that by looking at it. So that's the thing, is like you could look at a gematria database and see the values, and you won't really see how they may link. What the fuck? Are you kidding me? God damn it. Anyway, it also just shows that certain things that have yet to be developed are latent or, unfolded, enfolded. If you look at like the David Bohm implicate and explicate order, it's like it would be considered implicate. And so again, it just shows there's potentials laying there if only you had the pieces to the puzzle, or the development, the building blocks that, take development. One of the greatest advantages of having such a database is it gives an upper hand over certain subjects and data sets, especially those of which consist primarily, or at least heavily, in symbolic, numerical, or abstract information. And really any subject within the broad category of the occult, but also, again, mechanical, natural sciences, given that the information can be apprehended effectively when in its most basic of forms, which is numbers, or as the metaphysician would say, energy, as mathematics is essentially the science of energy. And yeah, it's vibrations, patterns, relationships, interrelation, or the relationship between abstract logic, I guess you could say, or abstract processings of data processing, and the actuation of it. So I don't know, it's just, like mathematics is itself an abstract thing, but it applies in almost every way, or in various ways, to any physical, manifestation, phenomena, thing. One of these subjects which has come to stand out enough for me to notice it and take further investigation is the potential use of Kabbalah and Gematria in particular for healing purposes. And again, Pythagoras and the vibrations and all that, like he knew that. A non-adept or someone unfamiliar with this field may wonder how such a feat may be possible with numbers and databases of information accorded by numerical weight. But when one becomes proficient enough through experience with these tools, they will see that virtually any data within any matrix is categorized according to a definite pattern or operating system, or i.e. formula, but again, coherence or context. And that's what gives things their development, their slow, gradual evolution into what they are from whatever it was, like minerals into plants or objects or whatever, and then back, they regenerate or recycle, and thus unknown data may be extrapolated from the known. I have found this to work in many, and again, because dark matter or dark energy is simply that which is beyond the present moment, or the construct, the time frame. It's what's called a hidden variable. I have found this to work in many applications, and I'm beginning to find extremely significant information which could be put into practical application if but it was considered. And that's the thing, people are like, oh, there's no practical value to gematria and stuff, but no, you have to, it's a slow, gradual thing where once you learn the rules and the laws and the procedures and the alphabet, then you start seeing, then you gain what you could call a siddhi, a power or a virtue, or an ability to see, using that knowledge, the sort of, not just the numerical value, but the interrelation, like other things start activating and coming into play. And it's not, oh, they're just random, unconnected things. It's things that are connected. Maybe not immediately, like at that moment, but somewhere down the line in the time cycle. So anyway, and that may only come through first using the tools. Again, this is where personal experience comes in most importantly. Because if information is not deeply understood, so it has to come into play in your life and somehow for you to see the practical value or personal value. But again, there's like a duality that people are like, oh, well, don't personally identify too much, which I even say that, like, because again, things change. Things dissolve, but for the time being, at that time, it has its place, its time and place. So that's you could say astrological, but again, that's like a trigger concept, trigger word, but it's all about timings and in magic, if you want to call it that, the whole magical calendar and the occult correspondences or hidden connections. It's all about alignments, obviously, and knowing, and that's obviously the basis of agriculture. And so, again, a lot of this stuff is actually very practical. You just have to slowly see how it plays out. Again, this is where personal experience comes in most importantly, because if information is not deeply understood as wisdom and truly grokked, then it will merely be hearsay and not as useful. So yeah, it's like, sure, you can read the books, but you have to actually see the process. One of the biggest concerns in our world at this point is the condition and quality of our environment, which is only getting more polluted by the day, with billions of people constantly driving vehicles emitting toxic fumes, which I guess they are getting a little better in that, but the amount of it is going up. So it's like shipping of it, oil spills, all that. Factories wasting and spilling noxious chemicals, and of course the lingering effects of the many oil and nuclear accidents of the past. I mean, they were storing nuclear waste from like the 30s to the 90s in the ocean. Not storing, but disposing of it. Since much of this cannot be avoided or even limited, and of course the mafia has also been paid off to dispose of other things in like illegal, cheaper ways, if you look into it. Since much of this cannot be avoided or even limited, the only thing we may do is brace ourselves mentally, buffer ourselves physically, and reinforce all that spiritually. Basically, spiritually, I say that, I mean, how do you do that? Well, I say that in the sense of like, a lot of it has to do with culture, so it is physical, but it's that time, it's what Alfred Korzybski would call time binding, or the passing on of cultural traditions, but also the meaning, the inherent underlying value, or the underlying meaning, the true tradition. Like, that's why, I mean, I don't know, a lot, like Christmas and all that has a value if you realize, like, not that symbolism and stuff. It's not really about the symbolism. It's about really conveying family bonds, family traditions, and all that. And that's the value kind of a lot of these religions and masonry, is they preserve these traditions and through symbolism, the meanings. Using gematria, I found a few major keys which I think could be expanded upon by others who may have a more knowledgeable and experiential background, like such as in the fields of electronics and other, more hands-on experience than I would have at this age, though may not exactly be familiar with Kabbalistic mathematics and light work, or again, looking at it in terms of energy. Because, yeah, like, there's a lot of Masons, there's a lot of people who know the generals, like, of Hebrew and Greek gematria and isopsophy, but because this stuff hasn't been kept up with for the last 50 to 100 years by very many people, it's all left in the in the dark or in the background, like Kenneth Grant book sort of things, which that's why I'm doing this again, is to get this out there, because I know it'll get out there to the people it needs to. Understanding that everything consists of fractals, 555, helps the worker, engineer, or mage in their circle or matrix of power ground in their space. Yeah, and ground is 333, and that has like psychological as well as practical or mechanical, electrical connotations. In their space of being, and draw from the 0 point the energies or powers, i.e. numerical forms, to create the blueprint of their willed results. The whole blueprint, be it material or spiritual, for the results are tied up with their means, which are all functions related to the 9 numbers of the directional matrix. And yeah, like I had this realization, a deeper, like I've known of the 333 number grid pattern, and I've talked about it, but then how it's necro, and it's got a lot of death consideration or connections. And it's past, present, and future, the time stations, and of waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. And I don't know, it has everything, because 333 is the seed, and it has everything to do with that capsule, the space, the boundaries, basically, the rings of Saturn, if you want to call it. Not literal Saturn, but the coils of the serpent is one way of putting it. But just the things that hold everything in fucking place. Like, it's fucking crazy, the 333 thing. And once you really get that, and you that's, in a way, that's like getting over death. That's about as close to immortality as you can get, is understanding 333 and getting past the gatekeeper of Karanzan. This is the same design as the Feng Shui Bagua grid of Chinese philosophy. The underlying and collective force is Qi, or Qi, related to Kia, which Kaf Yod Aleph is 111, the white light. Aleph, which again is like the light breathed into man, which is manifold and colored by its angle of refraction from the central prism. Again, the time and angles of Thoth, the prism of Thoth, where color, kalas, all that come into play. It should be noted also that Chi in Hebrew is the word for life, and in full it has the value of 444. Cheth, Hey, Yod. Which, as the 4 directions of the 3 dimensions, represents the cube, which can be made out of the Bagua if it is perceived as 3-dimensional. Thus, the white light of 3 rays emanating from Kether illumines the prism to generate the Leela of Maya, or the play of manifestation. And there's so much I could say about that whole thing, because there is, like, the whole concept of the Kabbalah and the Tree of Life is that basically from the point, manifestation unfolds into a toroidal, like, sphere, or toroidal orb. Like growing kind of like every point, basically. It's a fractal expansion process. And it's not contained just in 666. It obviously, it's an infinite sort of thing, but it somehow is contained in the web of numbers. Similar patterns, the yin-yang symbol is found in the shape of the galactic spiral, as well as the hemispheric play of light and shadow, which goes by 15 days or degrees each year. See The Secret of the Chinese Yin-Yang Symbol. 15 is also a form of the yin-yang, being not only the numbers of the Devil Tarot card, signifying the double one, the light and dark, open eye or closed eye, but also because 15 is composed of 6 and 9. But it's also Yod and He, another male and female interplay. The sun and the moon, the symbol of Cancer, the crab, who is the 11th sign, and 11 is, of course, the dual one, also related, again, to the devil. In The False Gospel of the Stars by Joseph A. Cease, the author mentions that Cancer was related to the scarab beetle by the Egyptians, which was the symbol of regeneration and resurrection. In the ancient zodiacs, Cancer was symbolized by unclean creatures, the scarab or sacred beetle. An Egyptian symbol of resurrection, Egyptian initiates were called scarabs because they pushed along the egg of their regeneration. And that Cancer was also originally zodiacally represented by the scarab. With regard to the sign of Cancer, one thing is certain, that we have not got the original picture or anything like it. It does not agree with the names either of its three constellations which have come down to us, or of its stars. In the ancient Dendera zodiac, the primary Egyptian depiction, it is represented by a scarabaeus or sacred beetle. In the zodiac of Esna and in a Hindu zodiac from 400 BC, it is the same. The scarabaeus, or scarabaeus, passing its earthly existence as a worm of the earth and thence issuing as a winged denizen of heaven, was held sacred by the Egyptians as an emblem of the resurrection of the body. And again, the scarab or beetle is symbolic in a way of the synchronicity or the acausal principle, 107, the egg, which is also all symbolic of synchronicity. Because Carl Jung, in that whole beetle story of the beetle appearing in the window when a patient was talking about one, I think in a dream. I mean, Kenneth Grant talks about the beetle extensively. Like, there's that Richard Marsh book called The Beetle, and Kenneth Grant saw like certain overlaps in that, even though it was fiction. It's all symbolic of basically this like cosmic connection outside of time with whatever it is. You could call it the spiral of life, or the of evolution itself. Whatever that principle is in the spark of life along the spiral of time. So according to the Greeks, Jupiter placed this crab amongst the signs of the zodiac. In Sir William Jones's Oriental Zodiac, we meet with a crab, and an Egyptian zodiac found at Rome bears also the crab in this sign. The more ancient Egyptians placed Hermanubis or Hermes with the head of an ibis or hawk as the symbol of the sign now allotted to Cancer. So, considering this, we can also consider the primary concept of the scarab and Cancer in gematria and see them to be precisely the same number, which is 272. The Gnosis, which connects with Hermes, the triple magus of the Greeks, who is the Thoth to the Egyptians, light, 7, in the 22 tarot cube. In the same book mentioned above, Cancer and the scarab are linked to the circle, which is the orb, 272, 202, of the Orbium Coelestium, the stars and the universe itself, the arch, the royal arch, or the pretty much how Chakma is called the zodiac, but it's the sphere of stars, or Masloth, or Mazaroth, either one. The gnosis of which is found in the stars, which are macrocosmic archetypes, which can be seen to be similar in their meanings to the plays we go through in our own microcosms. And again, that's what one of the themes in the Comte de Gabalis by the Abbé de Villers, or I forgot his name, but Comte de Gabalis talks about how that's basically what's happening. The so-called gods or archetypes are playing themselves out as us, or in our lives, in the lives of humans, or not just even humans, but animals and life itself. And in a way, we're adding to their, the oversoul or the oversouls. And that's technically correspondent with the Elohim. And again, it's all the sphere, the intelligences of the spheres. And in the Gurdjieff cosmology or system, each level or it's like an octave or a vibration or magnitude, but yet each one kind of feeds on the other or feeds into the other. And then from the top, so-called, and the bottom actually somehow it's a loop. It's a strange loop or a spiral staircase. It just so happens Cancer is the sign the sun passes from into Leo on July 23rd, which is the beginning of the dog days of summer, which, again, related to Set and Sirius, represents the high point of the summer around the time of the summer solstice. 23, of course, another hugely important number in the Kabbalah and related to synchronicity, discussed by many different authors, Robert Temple, Robert Anton Wilson, and Kenneth Grant, to name a few. Kenneth Grant's initials, KG, is also 23. Note that Kenneth Grant's birthday was itself the 23rd of May, the fifth month being 2 plus 3. And both Aleister Crowley and Freda Chad began their initiations when they were 23 years old. Crowley in 1898, when he joined the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, that should be a period, but Cancer entry on Constellation of Words mentions a relation between Cancer and Sirius as well as Typhon. And Achad in 1909, when he joined the AA, so I guess somehow this got rearranged, and I need to fix that, but so yeah, and Achad in 1909 when he joined the AA. It should also be known then that the Cancer entry on Constellation of Words website mentions a relation between Cancer and Sirius as well as Typhon. Kircher said that in Coptic Egypt it was Claria, the Bestia su Static Typhonis, the power of darkness, Lalande, identifying this with Anubis, one of the divinities of the Nile country commonly associated with Sirius. Note that if the C's in Cancer are taken as Gimel, because again, C, Gimel, Camel, ABC, would be being the third letter instead of Cheth, the value is 262, which also happens to be that of Claria, so Cancer and Claria, which is what he called it, which according to the Alpha and the Omega by Jim Cornwell means the folds or the resting places, referring to the seventh day of rest. Note that A rest is 666, the number of the formation and perfection, and day of rest, 365, the approximate number of days in one earth year. One of the days being reserved as the holy day on which the Hebrews uttered the holiest name of God, and the day reserved by the Mayans to be symbolic of the top of the 364 total stepped pyramid of Kukulkan. 91 or 1 through 13 on each side of the four sides, and 91 being man, and 13, again, the cycle of initiation, and I guess also the Royal Arch degree. With the topmost platform being the holy place of rest after ascending the folds or steps. The axial tilt of the Earth during the dog days is also at 23 degrees 26, which is also the coordinates of the Tropic of Cancer above the equator. The summer solstice is the celebration of light at its apex, both within and without, so therefore it is of extreme importance in regard to what we will explore, which is the metaphysical meaning of Cancer, the disease, which is the deadening, hardening, or stagnation of light, or chi, or kia. Late summer happens to be the best time to find mushrooms growing during the humid, sunny days in tropical regions, and the mushroom has long been associated with magic, healing, sacred and secret wisdom, as well as extraterrestrial or spiritual intelligences. The study of mushrooms and fungi is called mycology, and it should be obvious by now how the symbolism of the mycelial network of fungi is a very apt symbol for the nature not only the way gematria connects in a secret way, i.e. veiled underneath the letters and forms as numerical data, but also the sub- and superconscious strata of the mind, and Atman itself is weaved together or entangled with the cosmos it appears within. The demiurge, or substance-forming matrix space, as well as the ego, which is the formative identity and entification of form, both work in a similar way as per the typical formula of as above, so below. As we can see, and as others have shown, like Paul Stamets in the video below, the mycelial network of fungi parallels both the neurological fibering of the brain cells, as well as the projected imagery of galactic superclusters. The mushroom and its mycelium is symbolic of many things. and it is significant that the numbers for both mushroom equals 491 and mycelium equals 149, which are temuras or metatheses of the same numbers, which themselves reduce to 5. 5 is the number of the spirit and the matrix. Note, spirit equals the matrix, showing the one substance throughout the above or within and below or without. 5 is the midpoint between 1 and 9. 5 is the midpoint between 1 through 9 and is therefore symbolic of the womb or midsection, which is related, of course, to the root of the word matrix, which referred to the womb or uterus and also called the hold, which also connects with the 5 fingers of the hand. Note that 491 is also the number of the Greek Sabazios, the god of the sky who was associated with Bacchus and Pan, again being earthly earth dwellers, but again also connected to the heavens, as well as the serpent cults, which connect, of course, with the Herpeta or reptiles. The hand of Sabazios is a relic of the Sabbatic craft. Sabbat, again, Sabbat, and Sabbath is the German word for Saturn, and in Hebrew it is Shabbatai, or Sabbatai. The occult view of Saturn is far deeper than merely a physical planet of that name. It is also the Greek chronos, or time itself, as well as the dense, mundane, leaden physicality, whether conscious or aware or not, i.e. pure substance, or the negredo in alchemical terminology. The darkest and densest of matters is still relegated to the same spectrum as that of the highest purity of light, and the experience of one must be counterbalanced with the contrasting other. Note that adding the 19 to 491, the mushroom equals 510, the number of both Chronos and Phi, the golden ratio in the spiral of life. Again, because the spiral implies time. Phi and 5 are related to the fractals of 555 of manifestation, being the golden mean and the middle number associated with the 5 senses and the 5 elements, the fifth of which is spirit, symbolized by a black egg. 555 or 555 is of central importance in this post because it acts as a powerhouse of gnosis, connecting certain relevant subjects under one numerical key. Before having learned what I am about to explain, I had asked my magical partner at the time, Before having learned what I am about to explain, I had asked my magical partner, Soror 819, I had asked my magical partner, Soror 819, what sort of visions the number 555 gave her, and she told me that it reminded her of a large porous sponge. This in turn made me think of Crowley's star sponge vision, beginning in large part at Lake Pestwany in 1916 and explored by him further over the later years. A quote of his experience is necessary here to show what I think he was beginning to intuit naturally, which I will explain afterward by way of an exposé of certain relating concepts. The star sponge vision. From Chapter 82 of the Confessions of Aleister Crowley, page 809. There is a vision of peculiar character which has been of cardinal importance in my interior life, into which constant reference is made in my magical diaries. So far as I know, there is no extant description of this vision anywhere, and I was surprised on looking through my records to find that I had given no clear account of it myself. The vision developed gradually. It was repeated on so many occasions that I am unable to say at what period it may be called complete. I was on a retirement in a cottage overlooking Lake Pestwany in New Hampshire. I lost consciousness of everything but a universal space in which were innumerable bright points, and I realized this as a physical representation of the universe, in what I may call its essential structure. I exclaimed, "Nothingness with twinkles." I concentrated upon this vision, with the result that the void space which had been the principal element of it diminished in importance. Space appeared to be ablaze, yet the radiant points were not confused, and I thereupon completed my sentence with the exclamation, "But what twinkles?" The next stage of this vision led to an identification of the blazing points with the stars of the firmament, with ideas, souls, etc. I perceived also that each star was connected by a ray of light with each other star. In the world of ideas, each thought possessed a necessary relation with each other thought. Each such relation is of course a thought in itself. Each such ray is itself a star. It is here that the logical difficulty first presents itself. The seer has a direct perception of infinite series. Logically, therefore, it would appear as if the entire space must be filled up with a homogeneous blaze of light. This, however, is not the case. The space is completely full, and yet the monads which fill it are perfectly distinct. The ordinary reader might well exclaim that such statements exhibit symptoms of mental confusion. But to me, what I think of with basically like right here is this is where the Qliphoth come in, or the other side, the Sitra Akra or Ara, the other side of everything. It's the mere, because everything has a dual polarity to it. We just don't consider it. And the more you learn, and the more your eyes like get open, your mind's eye, the more you're able to see into the, not just see into something like the inner nature of it, but you can see its past from having understanding, and you can see kind of its future, not literally see the future, but it's like an adult who has been around children, a lot, or like a social worker. They can see the patterns that the kid themselves or the person may not consider themselves, because they're in the midst of it, but the social worker or the parent or the adult or whatever, they've already been there and done that, so they can kind of see. So again, that's just what this makes me think of is over time with the knowledge of the Kabbalah, you kind of do gain a sense of clear sight, even though, sure, there's a lot of complexity, there's a lot of information, and, really all this information I'm going into isn't what is really associated with the Kabbalah. I'm just using the Kabbalah to break it down and to, analyze things. While this vision could be looked at and connected with many different concepts, because again, it's very fractal, it connects kind of with his Ahamkara vision that I recently quoted. It should first be noted that just 10 years later in 1926, Karl Menger had described what has come to be known as the Menger sponge, which is a figure which simultaneously exhibits an infinite surface as well as zero volume, making it a fractal combination of the Cantor set and the Sierpinski carpet. An illustration of the iterative construction of a Menger sponge up to M3, the third iteration. This is essentially a mathematical design similar to what Crowley was expressing in his vision, which was a sort of macrocosmic version of the same idea, or like a mental form, which itself also connects to the atomic union of Nuit and Hadit, the within and the without. Something also of note considering all of this is that the Menger sponge has a Hebrew-English gematria value of 1221, which is also that of psilocybin mushrooms, as well as 2 Orama Tes Pan, or the vision of Pan, of which the former psilocybin mushrooms can bring upon in the right amount, set and setting. Crowley's star sponge, and that's all just kind of, even though it links in gematria, like all these things come to mind to me as it is. So Crowley's star sponge vision may in fact be a sort of vision of Pan, and it should be noted that 1221 is also ultimate sparks of the intimate fire. So, and he's talking about these like sparks mentioned in Library L, chapter 3, verse 67, in connection with the fourth part of the Great Ordeal. This is the gemmed azure that is the naked splendor of Nuit, gemmed with the secret ardors of Hadit. See AL chapter 1, verse 14. It is through their balanced union that the true goal of Towitzapoma, or Masonry, being 1221, is effected and brought to perfection. Telesphoria, effect, bring through, initiation, to perfection. 1221. Thus, 1221 veils the 2 triangles of the square and compass. One angle to 2 points, being the triangle, overlapping, forming the hexagram, or again, you can think of it as the cube, which is again related to Saturn and the cube ashlar of the Masons, the Kabbalistic cube of space-time. The cube of space-time and the energy blueprint within it unfolds and enfolds fractally. 1221 reduces to 6 the number of the faces of the cube, but it is also the number of the cube of 10, with none in its final value, or the cube of Eden, 10 being the number of the fullness or perfection. The 10 is the I, the Atman or self, equivalent to Hadit, the point which is located everywhere and nowhere. 1221 is also 111 times 11, or the white light refracted by the prism of Thoth, or contained in the egg. 1221 is also 9 more than 1212, signifying a birth or awakening of Horus into the timeless light of spirit. 9 again is HGA or age. 1212 is the hour or eon of Horus, while 1313 is that of the eon of Maat. 13 being the hour beyond time, central to the wheel of life, and again hub, the hub of the wheel, HUB, 5 plus 6 plus 2 is 13, and allocated to Maat, the balancer and measurer. The Maotians are thus those mages who live, as Nema says, downwind in the time stream, as well as those who are presently able, or were in the past able, to tap into the trans-temporal mycelial network of the matrix, such as the Egyptian initiates did, who were anciently known as masters of the net. The net is the grid of 9 numbers, and the fractal net of space-time, spirit, and matter. Again, the 333 thing. As Kenneth Grant says in the 5th book of his Typhonian trilogy, Outside the Circles of Time, the title Necronomicon in Greek yields the number 555, or by Greek Kabbalah. And herein is a possible key to the connection between the double current and the 2 eons of Horus and Maat. 555 is the number of Had fully extended, i.e. as tower or phallus. And again, Crowley realized that, that's why he has Liber 555, but if you spell it out, 5 plus 5 plus 5, implying again that 555, Aleph, Daleth, and then Yod, Teth. Hadit in full is 999, which is an even fuller, obviously, fractal chamber number, which Crowley didn't even really seem to get to, even though it's Therion. And again, that whole number is like too much. There's too much in that number to show me that I was right, and on September 9th of 2009, not knowing any of this, that there was something to it. But anyway, Had is the true mystery at the heart of the eon, for as Had is the manifestation of Nuit, so is Nu 56 the hiding of Had. And as 555 or 555 is the full expansion of Had, not Hadit, but Had, so is 11 the uttermost contraction of Nu. 11 is the number of magic and of the Qliphoth, and energy tending to change. Look, energy tending to change, 555. No one seems to have realized that either, because no one applies this, but yet somehow I'm just crazy. 11 is the number of magic and of the Qliphoth, energy tending to change, of the 11 temples of the Yazidi, and of the 11 gateways of the Necronomicon. Though fictional, the Necronomicon stands symbolic as a powerful gateway in the form of a book, because it's basically it's a dream grimoire. And the physical Necronomicon, there's multiple ones. They're not really Kenneth Grant. I'll get into it, but basically Kenneth Grant talks about how the true Necronomicon, in a way, is the Gematria database, or the astral record, or the Akashic record of data embedded in the 0 point. So, though fictional, the Necronomicon stands symbolic as a powerful gateway in the form of a book. In Grant's 9th book, The Ninth Arch, mention is made extensively to Il Grimoire Grantiano, or the Grant Grimoire, or the Grimoire of Clan Grant. And look, the Grimoire of the Clan Grant is also 999. So that also connects with the eon of truth and justice and the perfection and all that. So, a legendary book of shadows passed down throughout his family, which he relates to the astral grimoire of the Necronomicon and the Akashic book of Gematria itself. The gematria of the title itself shows that someone along the line, either consciously or unconsciously, tapped into this panacea of knowledge, obviously Lovecraft, and it would not be surprising whether either were the case. As far as a link between the eons of Horus and Maat, we can see how this may be so. And again, this is before I discovered that Hadith is 999 and Maat magic, the eon of truth and justice, all overlap. We can see how this may be so, for it is through gematria that we may see the interlinking of the magical work of certain adepts without their conscious awareness at the times of their working. And I italicize that because it's important. That's what the whole word of the eons kind of symbolizes, the fact that it's kind of like a passing of the torch in the sense that it's symbolic of a formula, and then so for someone to naturally have resonances with that formula or multiple formulas, it shows a continuation. This can be shown to be the case in the situation of the magical word which so befuddled Crowley and later concerned Frater Achad. The magical word of the eon is a sort of key which is passed along for many reasons, one of which is to confirm later manifestations and occurrences as being magically related to it via not only geometric analysis, but even something so simple as a correspondence in date number of magical manifestations. When the eonic formula, as in the case of my birthday, 821 with the formula Ma Ion, and again the April 2nd date, and I mean there's been a lot actually. Can't think of everything right now, but the formula in this case, Ma Ion, being given before such manifestations, i.e. 1948, the whole formula of Ma Ion, and August 21st, 1992, and without the conscious awareness of those involved in the reception, are thus seen as magically related and legitimate receptions, especially if further confirmation is received. The formulas of gematria, however, are merely a map of the territory, so to speak, and the manifestations tend to be more than purely numerical, although numerical ciphers often play one of the most apparent roles along with those manifestations. The formula of 555 veils the digital age of Aquarius, which we are now in. Aquarius again being the double current of Horus Maat running concurrently. In this digital age, we also have a great double-edged sword, or double wand of power, rather, that is, technology, which has potential for both immense good or bad. On the one hand, we have copious amounts of information, while on the other, it is almost so much we cannot handle it effectively. We have great electronic tools, but tend to use them for destruction and coercion, or entertainment and obsession or compulsion or whatever, than true innovation and advancement or exercise. Being at the center of 1 through 9, 5 is at the center of its dreams, which relates to the 555 value of diakrisis, meaning judgment or discernment. One of the given meanings on the Writing the Beast numerology website, discernment of the spirits, both good and evil, and this site also lists it as symbolic of desire or lust, which once again the exact definition of the Greek epithumia, which means the same thing. Discernment and desire are themselves somewhat contrasting concepts, though not necessarily, because again it has to do with the will and the bound up tendencies. Here's a digital imagery of the internet. It looks just like a mycelium pattern, and the sort of brain and cosmic filaments or whatever. 555 or 555 is the key which opens the gate of Thoth plus the mark of the beast, or as the mark of the beast. For the gate of Thoth equals 133, and added to the 22 paths which form the circle and the cross, or X of Tau, 400, totaling 555. Beyond the gate of Thoth lies the black, And again, because black with Kaf final is 555. And that makes me think of the whole concept of the man of black and the onyx gate, and this whole concept of the factor infinite and unknown and doth and death, and its decoding in how it's all talked about in the Ninth Arch. But anyway, the void of the Clephothic shells and the dark matter of the black holes of the star sponge. The black, in its Clephothic sense, as opposed to the magical or Kalinian sense, is also related to the black mold, which is a Clephothic fungus whose scientific name is Stachybotrys, which has a value of 444, the number of molds in general. So it's like the mold of molds. 111 is the pure white light which kills Clephothic mold in fungi. Thus, we see that 555 has the value of the LBRP rite, short for the Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram, and Magical Banishing Ritual, i.e. any banishing ritual, not just the LBRP, which makes use of the white light. 5, of course, being the pentagram of spirit, and thus 555 being the pentagram extended into the 3 dimensions. Although 444 or 444 is the number of one of the worst of all the molds, does not mean it is negative in and of itself. In fact, it may actually have a key to it. In fact, it is highly enlightening as a key to the solution for this affliction, just as 555 is that of the cancer cures, or it cures cancer. 555 is the number of many keys as to how the cancer matter may be understood and approached, for 555 is once again a number of discernment of good and evil, or healthiness and unhealthiness. It's also that grand balancer number. So it should be known that according to the more recent recensions of the Necronomicon, it is said there are no effective banishings for the forces invoked in the Necronomicon itself. This is because the forces involved are deeper and more powerful than those the average mage has a handle over, because it's being beyond the eons themselves, really. It's like forces from outside the circles of time, beyond the average elements and even dimensions or consciousness continuums, being as they are forces relegated to what are known as the outer ones, or the azoni, or unzoned forces. The traditional LBRP consists of the last part of the Lord's Prayer in Hebrew, which is given in Matthew chapter 6, verses 9 through 14, by Jesus. Thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever. Amen. Which I give the sort of like how it's broken down into the LBRP. Thou art, touch your forehead, or bring down the white light, touch your forehead and visualize white light, and vibrate Ate, which really it could be Aleph and Tau, or I guess like that. The kingdom, bring the light down to your waist, or root chakra, and vibrate Malkuth. In the power, bring the light up to the right shoulder and vibrate Vejabura. In the glory, bring over to your left shoulder, Vegyadula. Bring hands together in prayer form over the heart and vibrate Leolam. Amen. And imagine the light centralize, and really expand as well, in a brilliant golden orb, the Hiranyagarbha. Step forward facing eastward, trace the banishing pentagram of air and vibrate Yod-He Vav-He, Tetragrammaton, while visualizing an electric blue ray emanating as you go. Strike at the center and imagine a red lightning bolt strike outward, symbolizing the force of Jabura or Mars, the shield and arrow, symbolic of returning all such force directed at you to its source. Step back and turn to the south, step forward. Make the same pentagram in point but vibrate Adonai, Lord. Step back and turn to the west, step forward. Repeat the pattern vibrating Eheye, I am. Step back once more and turn to the north, step forward. Following the same pattern, vibrate Agla, the Notarikon or abbreviation of Ate Gabur Leolam Adonai. You, O Lord, are mighty forever. But bring the final strike over to the east to the center of the first pentagram. Return to the center of the circle facing east with arms outstretched and say, before me Raphael, behind me Gabriel, at my right hand Michael, at my left hand Oriel. Around me flames the pentagram, and within me shines or rays the Sitzrid star. Now repeat the Kabbalistic cross, which are the Ate through Amen above. And that's basically the basic LBRP. And that's the basic LBRP, but you can modify it however you want. The purpose of this ritual is to ground and center as well as reinforce the subconscious and conscious minds. The reason it is apparently not powerful enough to use to banish the forces unleashed through materials such as the Necronomicon or other trans-Plutonian, i.e. ultra-terrestrial or interdimensional influences, is because these are altogether beyond anything we know of as related to any strata of consciousness we can conceive, being as they are inimical to us by their nature of being outside the ring past knots of the Ein Sof Or. So, I mean, that's the thing, is like that orb that I had come in my room, unprovoked or whatever. I think of that in regards to a lot of this because that's my only experience so far with what I can only imagine as being fucking either a spirit or a ghost or an alien. And I mean, it could be some projection of my own mind, but it hasn't happened since, and it just, the way it happened, I'm open to that possibility. When the tentacles of Cthulhu, the subconscious, intertwine with the Kundalini, superconscious, different time loops and timelines occur. Cthulhu is symbolic of the Kundar Tigwador, which is the dragon tail of the shamans drifting back as an endless tube in the substrate of the primal subconscious, or just the past history of whatever led up to your being or being. The Kundalini is the forward projecting consciousness, which then becomes further tangled by the impressions of the Chitta, the Cthulhu, or mind stuff, which in Sanskrit also means memory and refers to the subconscious mind itself. So again, they intertwine. 555 is the level of the astral elementals, which can be banished relatively effectively if the elements themselves aren't too out of balance within the operator. But being as it is the central key to the triple gate of the abyss, it has the potential to open the watchtowers of fourth density of 444, which houses beings above, beyond, and outside of any human or animal consciousness levels. A simple banishing ritual will not balance and tame the forces conjured when effectively or effectually tapping into the psychic wiring of past, future, or parallel dimensional states of mind when these forces come floating or flooding in. Again, and Kenneth Grant talks about how 107 veils the key to a formula of opening the gates of space, which can flood the individual consciousness continuum. This is where the full function of the Tree of Life as an instrument of magical power comes in, as it shows the basic outline of the balancing of internal and external powers of the microcosm mind and macrocosm matrix, when understood from the fractal perspective and including the knowledge of death as the gateway to the Tree of Death, the Black Tree of Shadows. So that's what I'm saying. The Kabbalah helps to kind of put this into the proper filing cabinets, like, because really, like, the spheres on the middle pillar especially showed like a complete shift in density, you could say. This mapping of the paths and tunnels of the conscious and subconscious day and night side of the mind matrix can be useful for decoding the external, so I shouldn't have put the apostrophe, as its symbolism is compact, but of course the only way to fully understand it enough is to get to the Tiferet heart level, which illuminates and fully empowers it. Again, that's fucking hard to weasel out, which is why Crowley himself gave the warning that one must be at the stage. So yeah, the Tiferet, what I'm saying here is like, the whole sits thing comes to mind, what that truly means. There really is something underlying all the different formulas and symbolism, and what it symbolizes to me is, again, this magnetic energy center where it's that axle. And I mean, all of the chamber numbers are kind of like that axle. It's where things align and come into alignment. Like the alignment is 999. And so they're all an alignment number, but it's, 666 being the solar Tiferet number, 999 is like a very yesodic foundation number, being just below, 1000, 10 times 10 times 10, or Malkuth. The symbolism, it helps uncode basically the underlying meaning, is I guess what I'm trying to say there. Going back to the original impulse for this post, the number of the LBRP rite, Magical Banishing Ritual 555, which is also the Cancer Remedy and Cancers Cured, or the Cancer Cures with, again, the Gimel. And a few of the things which have been shown to slow or stop the growth of cancer have been analyzed and found to enumerate 555. And a few of the things which have been shown to slow or stop the growth of cancer have been analyzed and found to enumerate 555 as well. So it just goes to show that the connections are obvious if but the keys are provided. And again, there's probably a whole lot more. Here's a list of data I've come across regarding 555 and its relation to cancer, fungi, and mold. Fungus. The cancer is malignant. Eradicate cancer DNA, or at the DNA level. A toxic mold cured by sodium bicarbonate. So all of this, and some people say that. The cancer's molds. Mold inside cancer, cancer inside mold. Cleanse the dirty mold. Live mycelium network. There you go. That's fucking crazy. How to banish cancer. The cure ways. The chemo way. The cure answer, extract the cure, or the cure extract. And there's tons of things like we could try. The biocode of the cancer, decipher the cure, measure the cure. The cannabis cancer code, cannabis canceled cancer. Cannabis oil cure clue, marijuana THC cure. Hemp effect, the natural cure idea. Cure cancer and heal Vayu. Vayu is the element of air in Hinduism, also called Vata, Pavana, the purifier, and sometimes Prana, the breath. And star sponge plus Vata. Vata is the name of Vayu, the deva of air. The Prana Vayu Kundalini, potent Prana, Prana and Chi disease. The magnetic field radiation, the radiation of the body. Algae plus eradicate cancer, and some algae are said to be really healthy. Evidence, how to defeat cancer. I test how to defeat cancer. Heal the mind, healed by gnosis, purification keys. These are just a few which I have found that show how precise this pattern is. And I guess you could say, yeah, this is cherry picking, looking for things, but other things that just like spontaneously become obvious, I mean, that's technically not cherry picking, that's just geometric emergence or just emergence. But yeah, I looked for these, and I think that there's enough to show that, yeah, you can look and probably find something worth finding. And one more I obtained, which came to mind after deciphering these, which, yeah, that will happen if you play around enough with this stuff. It becomes spontaneous. The phrase air conditioning, which I didn't expect to equal exactly 555, but to my surprise it did upon first calculating it. Same with what? Out of this world? Of course, air conditioning, and again, that goes back to with this blueprint thing, the whole idea of the blueprint. Of course, air conditioning would be of prime importance to the above, though physical air conditioning is only part of what is needed for total protection and pranic empowerment. Astral and etheric air conditioning, again, clearing the airwaves, consists of banishing and cleansing of the higher and more subtle layers of being, again, and also over time, because the time factor has a lot to do with this, which are also prone to negative or clifothic infiltration or infection, and before things manifest outwardly in Malkuth, they must first achieve their potentiality within the higher planes, or again, they just have to have a good development to have a good, result. So to prevent this, it must also be tended to before it has a chance to achieve grounding. So again, it all has to do with like gardening. And Eden used to be a garden, but now it's a farm. 444 is a number of the four elements which are charged or cleansed by the white light and brought into three-dimensionality when brought under or beyond the abyss of Thoth. when brought under or beyond the abyss of Thoth in temporal manifestation by being infused with the Ruach or Chi, the life breath. And so again, it has to do with unfolding through the prism. And even Plato knew that the solids were based on the elemental tendencies. In addition to Chi, Hebrew life in full, 444 is also Sarx Kai Ima, flesh and blood, referring to that which is alive and manifest in O Argos, the field, all of nature itself, or the field of operation, or again, the field as in nature, like Eden, again, comes to mind. Adding 111 would imply the 5 addition of the 5th element of Akasha. So 555, signifying the grand balancer, is also the admonition to balance the elements. And that's another cure for cancer, which the Magus Frabato, or Franz Barden, stresses as a primary key to magical attainment in his first book, Initiation into Hermetics. The elements are like a huge, huge thing. They're small and boring, and you don't think there's much, but really that, and then again, the 5th element, which the Akasha, 107, but the Akasha 107 plus 4 is 111, and to me, this is a very 5th element sort of number. The balance of these elements in the bodily microcosm is key to the practical use of the elements in the outward macrocosm, and it is Malkuth which is the physical interface of both micro and macrocosm, and this work should be consulted in its entirety for further information. I guess I'm talking about that book. So yeah, I put notes on the ritual of the pentagram, additional notes by Mark Stavish, living in a mycelial world. Fungus networks play role in plant communication. Plants use underground fungal internet to communicate. Again, this all is very Cliffothic in the sense of like the tunnels underground and all that. Tryptamine hallucinogens and consciousness, aliens and archetypes with Terence McKenna and Jeffrey Mishlove. Mycelium running, how mushrooms can save the world. I think that's the one. No, that's a book. The Spirit of the Internet, Volume 1, Speculations on the Evolution of Global Consciousness. This DMT is not a drug. It's something that's disguising itself as a drug in order not to spread alarm. I think that the alien will be so alien that your jaw will hang in the air. And expecting to meet an anthropoid-like alien with an interest in your reproductive machinery and gross industrial capacity is as culture-bound a concept as searching NGC 321 for a good Italian restaurant. It's absurd on the face of it. All of human history is the signifier of the presence of the alien. Human history is what happens to an advanced animal species when it is interpenetrated on a scale of 1,000,000 years by a mind in another dimension. Terence McKenna, see podcast 150 of Matrix Masters, UFOs.